DUI is driving under the influence of alcoholic beverages, chemical substances, or controlled substances in the state of Florida. A lot of people think that it's just being over 0.08 for a breath or blood alcohol limit, which it is not. It's to the extent that your normal faculties are impaired and you're unable to effectively operate an automobile. It's my understanding that if a person is under the influence and appears to meet the DUI criteria, that you will be arrested at the scene and that you have to be arrested at the scene, and it's for the protection of other motorists. I've been to visit many of my clients in jail that are incarcerated on DUIs, and technically the Alachua County Jail is a detention center for the state of Florida, and the maximum sentence that you're supposed to serve in a county jail is 364 days in jail. Of course, DUI clients are necessarily arrested on scene and they're booked into the county jail. Typically, the alcohol has to wear off in order for them to be released the following day. But many of the clients that I've represented have been there on a second or third DUI, and they've received substantial jail time, anywhere from, on the low end, sometimes 10 days in jail, on the upper end, it's been a year in jail, and or prison, if it's more than a year. Going to jail is really difficult. Being confined and the curtailment of any of your freedoms is a real shock to most of our students. And when they find themselves in jail, they're really at a loss. And they may spend considerable time or a very short period of time, but I don't think anybody ever leaves jail unchanged. It's very complicated when we talk about rights when you're pulled over by police. What we generally advise students is that if the police have activated their sirens and lights, absolutely pull over. Because if you don't, you can face felony, fleeing, and eluding, which is a substantially enhanced penalty, potentially even beyond a DUI. After the stop occurs, the police have the right to ask for your registration, your driver's license, and proof of insurance. It's always been our recommendation to have those available and accessible, but don't necessarily reach for them after you're pulled over immediately, because the officer has no idea as they're approaching your automobile if you're reaching for a gun, for example. So usually wait for the officer to approach, unroll your window. If it's at night, turn on your light. Now, the officer doesn't necessarily have the right to search your car unless they have what's called probable cause to do so. If they believe that there's a weapon in the car, and for example, if you make any sudden movements, they may have the right to search your car. If you're arrested, then typically they'll do a search of your vehicle incident to arrest, and they'll be able to look in your car at that particular point. Or if they see potentially drugs in plain view, then that also gives them the right to search your car. The recommendation also is that you cooperate as much as possible with law enforcement. That does not mean that you have to incriminate yourself, but that you should be as polite as possible in answering basic questions. You obviously have the right, if you wanted to, you can refuse to do field sobriety exercises. You can refuse to answer any questions about the case itself. However, basic information they're allowed to ask, for example, your name, your address, your driver's license, your registration, your proof of insurance. That's a good question about whether or not you should refuse to take the field sobriety exercises or breath test, and it's very, very fact specific. Obviously, you probably want to cooperate as much as possible. However, when you take the field sobriety exercises, that may be certainly incriminating evidence could be collected, particularly because the officer is very likely to be videotaping you at that particular point in time and is looking for incriminating information such as your balance, how you're speaking, whether or not you understand the task they're asking you to perform, etc. In regard to whether or not to take the breath test, again, it's very, very fact specific, But if you refuse to take the breath test, then your license will automatically be suspended for a period of 12 months. Whereas if you took the breath test, if your blood alcohol level was typically over 0.08, then your driver's license can be suspended usually for 6 months, and by court, between 6 and 12 months. The possible outcomes for a DUI depend on what type of DUI that it is. If it's a first-time DUI, which generally it is with our students, you're usually looking at probation up to 12 months in length. It's between 6 and 12 months. Your driver's license will be suspended between 6 and 12 months. The fine can be between $500 and $1,000. The probationary period can be up to 12 months in length. And you will also have a vehicle impoundment for a period of 10 days, as well as a DUI school and 50 hours of community service.